Hello viewers, welcome to lecture 7 on industrial robotics subject. So in lecture 6 we discuss about end effectors, of course typically grippers. So we discuss about various things like classification, other things. So this lecture is a continuation of end effectors. In fact, in the previous lecture we discussed about some standard types of grippers, but there are so many other types of grippers depending upon some specific requirements. So let's see what are the various types in this lecture. So the first one is vacuum cups, or call it as vacuum gripper, because we had a hint about this earlier also. So generally what happens, the normal industrial components, we are able to grasp them using typical mechanical type of grippers. So imagine when you have large flat objects, or for that matter even small size but flat objects in multiple numbers. So how do we handle them, say especially glass? So can we use a typical mechanical type of gripper and then hold a glass? So it's not safe also, and in the large size it can hold only from the ends. So is there some other ways by which we can handle large flat objects like glass? So that is where your vacuum gripper comes into picture. If you look at the typical construction of that, they are also called suction cups, because obviously you have a suction cup through which you create a vacuum, thereby the cup grasps the object. So it's mainly for objects flat, smooth and clean objects like glass. So obviously the cup material is going to be elastic nature, rubber or soft plastic. So only when you have that little bit elasticity or the flexibility, then the gripping can be effective. You cannot have a hard or a rigid substance there. So mostly it's a piston operated or a vane driven device powered by electric motor, which creates that vacuum. So the lift capacity, that's again important parameter that depends upon the effective area of cup and the negative air pressure. So based on that the effectiveness will vary. So here you can see, so on the left hand side, so you can see there, this is where it is connected to the vacuum pump, and this is the suction cup which we were talking about. So in this case there is only one vacuum cup. So now otherwise what happens generally when the object is large, then one cup or one vacuum cup may not be sufficient. So on the right hand side you can see there are four cups, right, and all the four are connected to a common suction end which goes to the vacuum pump. So thereby you are able to cover larger areas and lift objects through that. So here I will play a small video wherein so this is typically in a ceramic industry or a tiles industry, where the tiles are manufactured. They come on a conveyor and that has to be packed. So you need a set of vacuum grippers which will lift them batch by batch, take them from the conveyor and keeps it onto the packaging box or output conveyor, whatever it is. So once I play the video, you'll understand. And this is also an example for multiple gripper. Recollect the earlier lecture where we saw a small video where we had three grippers to grasp that, and which we called it as a multiple gripper. And the video what you're going to see here also, it's a vacuum gripper, but you can also call it as a multiple gripper. So I'll play the video here, you can see for yourself. So you can see that the tiles have come on the conveyor. So there are multiple grippers there. So they take them, and simultaneously all the tiles or one batch of tiles are picked from that, and it keeps on to the packaging or the output conveyor. So first there you can see that there is a carton like where it is being kept. So this is the function of a vacuum gripper. So other types of grippers, right? We'll see what are the other types. So magnetic grippers, of course, could be permanent or electromagnet. So magnetic grippers are interesting because can we use the magnetic property as a gripper? So why this discussion comes? Because so if you take the normal grippers, we discuss about two fingers, and we felt sometimes two fingers may not be sufficient to hold. Then we needed 3 fingers, right? So all these things are there, and you design a gripper for one particular size and shape. What if tomorrow there is a change in the design where it increases, changes the size and the shape of it, all those things are there, right? So whereas in say magnetic gripper, all that you need it is, of course, we have playfully done certain things. When you get a magnet, you just take it to a metal piece, it automatically gets attached to it, right? So you don't need anything else, just take it near to the object, it gets attached to it. So that's interesting, and can we use that property to use it as a gripper? So let's see here. So of course one constraint is you can use magnetic grippers to handle only ferrous materials. So the advantages, what are the various advantages? Pickup times are very fast. As I told you, if you have a typical mechanical fingers, you have to go there, open, and then close it. So all those things are not needed here. Just go touch the object, it gets picked. So you get fast cycles. And the next is variation in part size can be tolerated or rather accommodated. So as I told you, when there is design change, the size or shape may change, and when you have a magnetic gripper, I need not worry about those changes in that. So it will very much get accommodated. And then handle metal parts with holes, which is not possible by vacuum grippers. Again, when we are talking about vacuum grippers, we said large flat metal sheets can be picked comfortably and conveniently using a vacuum gripper. What if those metal sheet has a hole? Obviously the vacuum gripper cannot be used, and in such situations definitely a magnetic gripper will be of much use. So it requires only one surface for gripping, right? If I have an object and if I have a typical finger, on two sides I am gripping it, whereas in it is a magnetic gripper, just one side, just touch it, right? So it requires only one surface for gripping. So in spite of there are a lot of advantages, could there be any disadvantage of using a magnetic gripper? Let's see. So residual magnetism in the workpiece. So this is a very important or a big problem with magnetic grippers. Again, as I told you, day-to-day life, when you use a magnet and a metal piece, when you frequently touch it, after some time you can see that the even without the magnet, that metal piece itself will have some magnetism in it. So that is what we call it as residual magnetism in the workpiece. There are a couple of occasions where this will be a drawback. Say for example, this component which has a residual magnetism, it's going to be an independent component, maybe not a problem. So imagine this component goes into an assembly, then there will be a problem. That is one situation. The other one is like when such components are being used in some instruments where this magnetic field, especially measuring instruments or bio related instruments, so this might affect those things. So that way it is going to be a drawback. Of course, if you can find out the ways and means to remove the residual magnetism, then yes, definitely you can make use of all those advantages that you have with the magnetic grippers. So next is can't pick a single sheet from a stack. So if it is glass, not an issue. If it is a metal sheets, they are stacked one over the other. And when you when you have a magnetic gripper, unless the magnetic field, the strength of the magnetic field should be precisely calculated so that it doesn't penetrate beyond one single sheet in the stack. So otherwise you want to intend to remove one sheet at the top one, whereas two sheets may get stuck together when the magnetic force is too much. So you need to very precisely calculate that when you're handling stack of sheets. So that is one drawback here. So here you can see the diagram, because there are two options. One, a magnetic permanent magnet. So here you can see, of course, there is a compressed air here. So when the compressed air goes inside, of course the magnet goes down, and when you go take it near to the object, it gets picked up. And then another problem is when you go take it to the location where this part has to be released, how do we release it when it is a permanent magnet? Right, it's permanent magnet, so the object will be all the time attached to the magnet. how do we release it? So now here you can see in the right hand side in this diagram we can see so the compressed air is sent from the bottom wherein the magnet is lifted up. Of course when there is sufficient gap between the magnet and the object, automatically the object or the component is released. So this is one drawback with permanent magnet. Again you need to have a pneumatic circuit or something to operate this. All those things are there. So that is where when you can have a electromagnet, so it is easy. You don't need all these compressed air to make movements to that. So here you can see that this is being used to lift a pipe. And one more thing is here you can see that electromagnetic moment you give electricity, the magnetism is activated, and once you remove the electric power, automatically the magnetism goes and then the object gets released. And one more interesting thing here, you can see that though it's a cylindrical pipe, I need not worry much about what will be the design of my gripper. I just touch at the surface and I'm able to lift it. So this is the advantage of magnetic grippers. So again there are so many other types, as I told you, the different requirements. So first one, adhesive gripper, scoop, hooks, inflatable bladder or diaphragm, balloon gripper. So let's have a quick look at what these grippers and how they function. So adhesive grippers mainly comes, see where we talked about the metal sheets and glass sheets where we could handle it using a vacuum gripper. But how can you handle a fabric which is also large flat? How do we handle it? So that is where your adhesive gripper comes into picture. Of course it's quite interesting because the adhesive gripper, the moment you say adhesion, there is some adhesive on that, it gets attached to the fabric. Now next question is, how do I release or separate these two? So that is what this diagram shows us. So what happens here, so this goes and touches, of course it touches here, and so this is gradually tilted and lifted so that there is a discontinuity here wherein the gripper is separated from the fabric. So this is about adhesive grippers. So next is about a scoop here. Of course you can see the animation. Of course it's not typical of a scoop. So in the first lecture when I discussed why do we need robots, so there are certain tasks which human cannot do, means physical strength or repeated jobs, and there are occasions, situations where hazardous situations. Say for example, there is a laboratory, a chemical laboratory, where a researcher wants to try some new combination of materials where it is unpredictable, especially. So it is very difficult for the human to go there and do that. So a scoop type of gripper, where you can use it to scoop the material, a chemical from a container and then add it on to a instrument or whatever it is. So that is where your scoop will come into picture. So again here also again loading and unloading from overhead conveyors, that is also one thing. Again some explosive material where you want to handle, right. Of course this design is slightly different. There are so many designs for the hook itself where there is a box, you can lower down and give a movement and then lift the box and things like that. And next you have inflatable bladder or diaphragm. So all the time we have been discussing about mechanical or rigid grippers or fingers. Of course in case of a vacuum gripper it is soft, but what if the material is fragile, and you can't use a vacuum gripper also, and you can't use a mechanical gripper also. So how do we, of course when I say mechanical gripper, you can have a soft pad lined inside, but still when the object is very fragile it will be difficult to handle it. That is one. And another situation is, what if it's a finished surface where a gripper might damage it. So there's so many situations. So let's see how this actually works. So you can see the animation here. Initially the diaphragm it's not inflated, So it's sent inside the component, and air is pressurized, and then it expands, and then thereby you can lift it. So I'll play a small video here. Here you can find out the operator is putting that into the center part of the component, and one there is a compressed air, when it's sent inside, the balloon or the bladder expands, and thereby it grasps it. Right, you saw the video. So there is no finger or anything. So just insert it, expand it, and you are able to handle it. Of course, in this video, it is not a fragile object, but it's slightly bigger object. It's very difficult to handle it using a conventional gripper. They found this inflatable bladder as a convenient solution. So this is another interesting thing, a flexible balloon gripper. It's flexible. Again, just like in case of magnetic grippers, where we had the flexibility of handling different shapes and sizes, this balloon gripper also works on a vacuum principle, where it can lift objects of different shapes. So I'll play a small video here. Right, it's a balloon gripper. So here you can see, of course, basically this robo is trying to pick small components and pack into a toolbox. You can see the flexibility of the gripper. Right, the components are of different sizes and shapes. The single gripper is able to handle it. So that is the advantage of balloon grippers. So of course this is a grab it gripper. So now initially we saw how to handle industrial components, a metal component, and then we discussed about vacuum grippers to handle large flat objects, and then we discussed about fragile objects. So the next thing is interesting thing is or a challenging thing is rather, how do we handle food items? Say for example, you need to handle fruits and vegetables. So here you can see this one gripper was named out of the company Grab It. So I'll play video here. You will be able to see how this gripper is able to handle a fruit here. So I'll play the video here. Right, so it comes down. So they're all soft ones. There is no hard part over that, and it is able to pick the apple without damaging it, because in case of fruits, very sensitive. Even one small spot where it's being damaged, then from that point it will start deteriorating throughout. So that's why it's very sensitive, and this type of grippers will be of much use. So like this, you can keep on creating different types of grippers depending upon your specific needs, right? So only your imagination is your limit to create new different types of the things. And of course, obviously, when you go to YouTube, you can find a lot of such unique type of grippers. Right. So far we discussed about different types of grippers. Of course, the first we started that the end effectors are classified into two categories. The first one is grippers, and the second one is where end effectors will carry tools. So when you say gripper, typically they all, irrespective of the design and the type, they all do the task of picking up or holding a component, right? Of course, loading, unloading, whatever it is. Whereas there is other category where in place of fingers, I put in a tool there where it does some operation. Rather, instead of handling it, the end effector does an operation. When I say operation, there are so many machining operations. Let's see one by one how robots can be used to do that effectively. Right, tools as end effectors. So the first one is spot welding. So if you recollect the couple of videos which I showed in the beginning in an typical automotive assembly shop, so you can see a lot of robots doing this spot welding. So because spot welding is very important because you have to do the welding in a precisely exact location, and of course welding also should be perfect, so which is very difficult for a human being to do, where a robot can do a better job. So now here you can see there's a spot welding, and this is where you have uh, uh, the welding tips. So that goes into the, of course, on the right hand side you can see in assembly. So it has to go in a different angles or orientations to do the welding, where a robot does a perfect job. So next is arc welding. So what is the difficulty in arc welding? So if you want a welding to be perfect, you need two things are important, two parameters rather. One is the distance between the object and the electrode, that is one, and a uniform speed. So only these two, when they are perfect, you can ensure a good quality welding. So which is practically very difficult for a human to do that, especially in case of critical weldings. Right? So that is exactly where robots play a major role. Again, here you can see, as I told you, so in place of an end effector, I mean in place of a gripper, so welding torch has been attached there, and on the right hand side you can see a robo, because the ABB robo doing the welding job precisely. And third is spray painting. This is another important task. The painting, the most important thing in painting is the uniformity. So if you want to maintain that uniformity, again, two things. One, the distance between the surface, painting surface, and your paint gun. So this, the distance or the gap should be maintained uniformly. That is one. And if it is a flat surface, fine, not an issue. Whereas when you have a curved surface, especially you have seen so many cars and bikes where, of course, because of all this computer design and manufacturing, it's easy for you to create any complex shapes. So in case of a complex shape, or for that matter a simple curved surface, how do I maintain the speed and also at the same time maintain the exact the gap between the surface and the agate? It's very tricky. So that is where robots come into picture, where a paint gun is attached to the wrist and it does the painting. And again, especially in automotive industries, painting, the quality of paint is a very important deciding factor in the success of the product. So this is, you can see here, robot doing the painting job. So next is about drilling. Of course, the normal drilling is different. But when you want to do precise drilling, say in the diagram you can see, right? So a lot of holes are to be drilled in a precise locations. So another example is, imagine you need to do a drilling in a PCB or a printed circuit board. So the accuracy is very important. Accuracy and speed both are important, where a robot can do a better job than doing it manually. So next is about the grinding. Again, you can see the diagram itself explanatory. The most important thing in grinding is, especially when you are doing a finishing operation on a component, so the amount of force that you exert onto the object which is to be ground, so that is to be uniform throughout the surface of the part of the component. So for two reasons. One is, only when you apply uniform force throughout, the surface finish will be uniform throughout the surface of the part. That is one. And the second thing is, if you want to maintain dimensional accuracy, the uniform force is very important. So that is where a robot does a better job than doing it manually. And third is about wire brushing. Again, most of the machining operations, one of the problem is the burrs, which occurs on the surface of the component. And of course, maybe when you did the normal welding in your workshop in your first year or second year, you might have used the wire brush where you apply on the surface and then try to remove the burrs. But when it comes to critical components, uniformity is again very important, because if you don't apply the exact pressure, right, there is a possibility that you might lose the dimensional accuracy. So you need to have uniform surface finish, and you also have to maintain the dimensional accuracy. So that is where Robo does a better job. So next is about attaching a heating torch as an end effector. So probably in manufacturing technology you might have studied about there are certain surface hardening methods, wherein instead of heat treating the whole component, only the parts or the area where the component is going to be subjected to wear and tear, you need to do the heating or the hardening, or call it as localized heating or localized hardening. So there also you want to maintain uniformity, because again the distance between the component and the heating torch, so that has to be uniform. Again, when it is a flat surface, it will look simple. But say for example, you have got a sand mold, wherein you need to, the curvature is different, right? It's not a flat or a smooth surface. So in that case, how do I maintain uniformity, the distance between the heating torch and the component? So it is again very difficult, whereas a Robo can do a better job. Next interesting thing is water jet cutting. So no one thought that water could be used as a weapon rather. Otherwise, water, you assume it's to be a liquid, soft and things like that. But whereas the same water, when it is sent as a force jet, it is able to do a cutting operation, and surprisingly, with sufficient cutting parameters, the water jet is even able to cut metals. Well, there are various advantages of using a water jet for cutting. That's beyond the scope of this topic. Now, why do we need robots to do this job? So again, as I told you, when you're doing this cutting operation, so for the maintain the dimensional accuracy without leaving any burrs, right? So the water jet has to be precisely controlled. In the sense, the movement of the water jet has to be precisely controlled for the cutting to happen smoothly. So this is where a Robo comes into picture. So a water jet or a water gun is attached to the wrist of the Robo, and it acts as a tool. Now, so starting from the beginning, we saw so many types of grippers, right? So many types. Then what is the basis on which I select a particular type of gripper? Do I go for mechanical? Do I go for magnetic? Do I go for vacuum? Right? Which type do I choose? On what basis do I choose? So let's see what are the various things or points or parameters that you have to keep in mind when you're selecting a particular type of gripper. So the first one is the part surface should be reachable. So especially when you have a fingered grippers and there is a part, so it must be able to access, go and then catch hold of it or grasp it. So reachability or accessibility should be easier. That is very, very important for a gripper. Second is size variation of the part must be accounted for. So during my lecture I was telling you, especially when we are discussing about magnetic grippers. So design changes when it happens, when there is a change in size or shape. Do I, for every design change, can I keep changing the design of the gripper? You can, but it involves time, money. But instead, my design should be such that this variation can be accommodated or accounted for. Scratching and distorting the part during gripping. So you need to necessarily apply a sufficient gripping force, but in that process that should not damage the surface of the part, right? So your gripper must be so designed. Replaceable fingers, of course, this also I touched upon. So when you're using a mechanical gripper, say for example, So the fingers are the one which will come into contact with the workpiece, which will undergo wear and tear. So you must be able to replace the finger and not the entire hand. So which will reduce the maintenance cost. So it should have a replaceable finger. Self-aligning fingers. So that's the beauty of a human hand, right? You take a pen, it adjusts accordingly. Take a spherical ball, it automatically aligns, right? So your gripper must have that facility. I mean, typically a human hand, self-aligning fingers, so that the variation in the shape is accounted for. Grasping forces. Of course, two things. One, the actuating mechanism, the design. Of course, the force, whether you use electric or pneumatic, whatever be it, your gripper should be able to apply required or sufficient grasping force of the component, especially when a robo works on a fast pick and place or fast cycles. The movement is fast, so it must be able to apply sufficient grasping force. Speed and acceleration of the robotic arm, of course, is related. Depending upon, irrespective of the speed and acceleration of the robotic arm, still the gripper must be able to apply sufficient grasping force, right? So we have come to end of lecture 7. So before winding up, let's see what are the topics which we discussed in this lecture. We discussed about vacuum gripper and magnetic grippers. Because in addition to that, we discussed about various types of miscellaneous grippers, because the requirements are varied, and for each requirement a new design comes up. So we saw few of the grippers there. The next important thing what we discussed was the tools as end effectors. How when a tool is attached to the robo's arm or the wrist, what sort of operations it can perform. And finally, and most importantly, what are the various parameters that we need to consider for a particular gripper selection. So it's the end of lecture 7. Thanks for watching it. I hope again it will be informative and interesting. I'll see you in my next lecture. Thank you again.